My mother always said I was the strong one. I didn't realize that was just her excuse to steal $200,000 from my future and hand it to my brother on a silver platter. The contrast in our house was so sharp, it felt like living in two different dimensions. In the living room, my brother Leo was sprawled across the sofa like a king, surrounded by luxury interior design magazines and expensive takeout. My parents were hovering over him, their voices thick with a sickening, sugary excitement as they pointed at floor plans for his new downtown condo. They treated him like a fragile porcelain doll that needed a $200,000 cushion to survive the harsh world. Meanwhile, I was in my room, or what used to be a home office before they shoved my life into the corner, taping up cardboard boxes I'd bought with my own tips from the diner. I was leaving for my dream university in 3 weeks, a goal I had achieved through late-night study sessions and pure, unadulterated grit. Yet while my parents were busy planning the crown molding for Leo's new place, they hadn't once asked if I needed help with my tuition or my move. To them, I was just the background noise, the unpaid intern of the family who could always be relied on to figure it out on my own. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was just the engine that kept the house running while they fueled their golden boy's dreams with my life savings. They were about to learn that the strong one has the strongest grip, and I was ready to take back everything they had stolen. If you think my parents deserve to pay for what they did, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens next. The fallout is going to be absolute carnage. The air in the living room was thick, with the scent of expensive catering and the kind of suffocating smugness only my parents could manufacture. My brother Leo sat enthroned on the velvet sofa, nursing a drink while my mother, Martha, beamed at him like he'd just discovered fire instead of just finding another way to fail upward. I stood by the door, my Ivy League orientation packet heavy in my bag, waiting for the one thing that mattered, my tuition check. The deadline was 48 hours away. To Leo's fresh start, my father Silas toasted, his voice booming with a pride I had never once tasted. He slid a sleek, minimalist brochure across the coffee table. It wasn't a brochure for a car or a vacation. It was a deed for a luxury condo in the city's historic district. My heart did a slow, sickening roll in my chest. A condo? I asked, my voice cutting through their laughter like a blade. With what money, Dad? You told me the business was in a slump last month. Martha didn't even flinch. She just straightened Leo's collar, her eyes never leaving her quote, golden boy. We had to prioritize Leah. Leo needs stability to find his footing. You're the strong one. You've always been the one who just figures it out. The room began to tilt. Figures what out? My tuition is $200,000. Grandma Sylvia's fund is being put to good use, Silas interrupted, finally looking at me with a cold, dismissive finality. We moved the funds this morning to close the deal. It's a family reinvestment, Leah. You can take out loans. You have the grades for it. Leo doesn't. The betrayal wasn't a heat. It was an Arctic chill that settled in my marrow. They hadn't just borrowed the money. They had liquidated my entire existence to buy a view for a son who had dropped out of 3 programs in as many years. I looked at Leo, waiting for a shred of shame, but he only offered a small, jagged smirk over the rim of his glass. You really did it, I whispered, the good girl in me dying a violent death, right there on the Persian rug. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt a strange, terrifying clarity wash over me. I reached into my bag, but I wasn't grabbing my orientation papers. I was grabbing my phone to make the one call that would end their world. As I dialed, my mother's phone began to chime with an alert she didn't recognize. Her smile faltered as she looked at the screen. Silas? Why did I just get a notification that our primary deed has a pending lien? I stared her straight in the eyes, my finger hovering over the dial button for Grandma Sylvia. Because you forgot one thing, Mom. I'm not just the strong one. I'm the one who kept the keys. The air in the living room tasted like ozone and expensive champagne. I stood in the center of the rug, my Ivy League acceptance letter crumpled in my fist, watching my mother meticulously place a sold sticker over the condo's floor plan. The silence was a cord stretched to the breaking point. Where is it? I asked. My voice didn't shake. It was a low, dangerous hum. The trust account. I checked it this morning, Mom. $200,000 is gone. Every cent Grandma Sylvia saved for me is missing. My mother didn't even look up. She just smoothed the edge of the sticker with her thumb. Leah, don't be dramatic. We didn't take it. We reinvested it into the family's future. Leo needs a base, a place to finally get his life together. His life? I stepped into her space, forcing her to meet my eyes. He's 30. He hasn't held a job for more than 3 months in his life. That was my tuition, my housing, my future. You stole it. Watch your tone, my father warned from the doorway, but I ignored him. You're the strong one, Leah. my mother said, finally turning to face me. Her expression wasn't guilty. It was annoyed. You've always been able to handle yourself. You'll get a job. You'll take out loans. You'll survive. But Leo? He's fragile. He needs the cushion. He needs this condo more than you need some fancy degree. I felt the last shred of my daughterly loyalty snap. The escalation was instantaneous. I didn't scream. I smiled. It was a cold, jagged expression that made her step back. You really think it's that simple? I pulled a second document from my pocket. Not a letter of acceptance, but a notarized copy of the trust's original terms. Grandma Sylvia knew you'd do this. She warned me that your favoritism was a disease. What is that? My father demanded, his face paling as he saw the bank's seal. It's the reason the police are going to be at that condo in 20 minutes, I whispered. Because the moment you moved that money, you didn't just hurt me. You triggered a forensic audit of every account you own. My mother's phone began to vibrate violently on the table. She looked at the screen, her face turning a ghostly, translucent white. Leah, what did you do? I didn't do anything, I said, backing toward the door. Grandma did, and she just sent the link to the town's community page. Look at your screen, Mom. Everyone is watching. The clock on the dashboard glowed 2:14 a.m., a ghostly green light cutting through the pitch-black highway. My knuckles were white against the steering wheel, and my breathing was the only sound in the cabin, sharp, jagged, and fueled by a cold, crystalline fury. I hadn't packed a suitcase. I had packed a survival kit, my birth certificate, the original trust documents, and every shred of evidence of my parents' betrayal. Behind me, the house I grew up in was a receding shadow in the rearview mirror, a place that had officially become a crime scene the moment my mother chose Leo's comfort over my life. Every mile felt like a layer of good girl skin peeling away. They thought I was driving to a friend's house to cry. They thought I'd be back by breakfast, eyes red and spirit broken, ready to sign the loan papers they'd surely have waiting on the kitchen island. They were wrong. I wasn't running away. I was mobilizing. Grandma Sylvia's estate appeared like a fortress against the horizon. She was the only one who never fell for Leo's fragile act, the only one who saw my silence not as submission, but as strength. As I pulled into her long, gravel driveway, my headlights caught a figure standing on the porch. Sylvia was already awake, wrapped in a silk robe, holding a steaming mug in one hand and a thick manila folder in the other. She didn't look surprised. She looked like a general waiting for her favorite soldier to return from the front lines. I killed the engine and stepped out into the biting night air. They did it, Grandma, I said, my voice sounding older, harder. They closed on the condo this morning. Sylvia's eyes flashed with a lethal, predatory light. I know, Leah. I've been tracking the wire transfers since 9 a.m. She stepped down the porch stairs, the gravel crunching under her slippers. She leaned in close, her voice a low, terrifying whisper. But they didn't just move your tuition. In their greed, your father accessed a secondary account he wasn't supposed to touch, one linked to a federal tax shelter I set up 20 years ago. She handed me the folder. I flipped it open, my eyes scanning the top page as the blood drained from my face. Grandma, I breathed, if I hand this to the auditor, it won't just be a lawsuit, Leah, she said, a slow, grim smile spreading across her face. By sunrise, your parents won't just be broke. They'll be fugitives. The interior of Grandma Sylvia's study felt like a war room. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves hemmed us in, and the air smelled of old paper and the sharp, metallic scent of a woman who had been preparing for a siege. She spread the contents of the manila folder across the mahogany desk. It wasn't just bank statements. There were photos, notarized affidavits, and a series of private investigator reports that dated back 5 years. You think they just stumbled into this decision, Leah? Sylvia asked, her voice like grinding stones. Your mother has been skimming from the interest of your trust for years to pay for Leo's, quote, creative retreats and business ventures. I watched every cent move. I let her do it. I felt a jolt of betrayal, not from my mother, but from the woman I thought was my only ally. You let her steal from me? I let her build a gallows, Sylvia countered, her eyes flashing with a ruthless brilliance. If I had stopped her at 5,000, she would have just found a craftier way to lie. But 200,000, that is a felony. That is grand larceny. And because she moved it across state lines into that downtown property, it's federal. She tapped a specific document, a transfer of liability agreement. My breath hitched. It was signed by my father, but the witness signature belonged to a name I didn't recognize. The plot twist, Leah, is that your father didn't just steal your money. He used the trust as collateral for a high-interest private loan to cover his own business debts before buying that condo. He's been running a Ponzi scheme with your future as the foundation. The escalation hit me like a physical blow. The stakes had shifted from a tuition dispute to a total family collapse. My parents weren't just biased, they were criminals. They're at the condo right now, celebrating, I said, my voice hardening into a weapon. They think they've won. Let them celebrate, Sylvia whispered, picking up her landline and dialing a number she had memorized years ago. I just triggered the insolvency clause. By the time they finish their second bottle of champagne, every credit card in that house will be declined, and the locks on that condo will be electronically overridden. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a frantic, terrifying video message from my mother. In the background, I could hear sirens and the heavy thud of boots against a door. Leah, tell your grandmother to stop. Men are here, and they're taking Leo. I looked at Sylvia. She didn't blink. That's not the police, Leah, she said softly. That's the bank's recovery team, and they're not just there for the money. The drive back to the city felt like a descent into a lion's den, but this time, I was the one with the teeth. I pulled up to the curb of the luxury condo building, the modern glass facade glowing with the warm, golden light of a party in full swing. My parents hadn't just moved in. They were hosting an inauguration gala for Leo, using the last of the stolen funds to buy the town's silence with vintage wine and expensive hors d'oeuvre. I walked through the open doors of the penthouse, the air vibrating with the sound of laughter and clinking crystal. My mother, Martha, was center stage, draped in a silk wrap that probably cost as much as my first semester books. She was holding court with the neighbors, her voice an airy trill. And the terrace view is simply divine. Leo needs the inspiration, you see. He's finally in an environment that matches his potential. It's a beautiful place, Mom, I said, stepping into the circle. The laughter died down as the guests turned to look at me, my wind-whipped hair and dark circles, a sharp contrast to their polished perfection. Martha's smile tightened into a mask. Leah, you're back. I hope you've come to apologize for that dramatic scene earlier. I came to see what $200,000 looks like in person, I replied, picking up a champagne flute from a passing waiter. I let Silas and Leo join the circle, my brother looking smug in a designer suit that was clearly bought with my money. You did a great job, Dad. The marble in the kitchen is exquisite. It's almost a shame you won't get to see it in the daylight. Leah, enough, Silas hissed, stepping closer. Don't ruin this for your brother. I'm not ruining it, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket and tapping the screen to mirror it to the massive smart TV behind the bar. I'm just documenting the family reinvestment you mentioned. The screen flickered to life, but it wasn't photos of the condo. It was a live feed of the building's lobby. 4 men in dark suits were speaking to the concierge, holding up a repossession order and a federal warrant. The room went deathly silent. That's the recovery team Grandma Sylvia mentioned, I whispered, my voice echoing in the hush. And they aren't here for the furniture. As a heavy thud shook the penthouse door, my father's phone rang. He answered it, his face turning a bruised shade of purple. He looked at me, his hand trembling. The business accounts. They're gone. Everything is zeroed out. That was just the appetizer, I said, leaning in so only my family could hear. Check the second notification, Dad. The one from the district attorney. The penthouse was no longer a party. It was a crime scene. The guests had fled like rats, leaving half-eaten shrimp and lukewarm champagne behind, as the recovery team began tagging the designer furniture. My mother sat on the edge of a white leather armchair, her silk wrap disheveled, looking at me, with a mixture of horror and desperate, calculated grief. Leah, please, she sobbed, her voice echoing off the cold marble walls. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell the DA you gave us permission. If you don't drop the suit, your father is going to prison. Is that what you want? To destroy your own father over money? I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city lights. It's not about money, Mom. It's about the fact that you looked at my entire life and decided it was worth less than a down payment for Leo. We did it for the family, my father roared, his face a mottled, desperate red. He was clutching a stack of legal papers as if they could shield him from the truth. Once Leo got settled, we were going to pay you back. We're your parents, Leah. We love you. We just needed you to be the strong one for a little longer. The word love felt like a slur coming from his mouth. I turned to look at Leo, who was slumped against the bar, staring at his expensive watch as if he couldn't believe it was about to be repossessed. He hadn't said a word to defend me. Not once. You love the version of me that stays silent, I said, my voice cutting through their noise. You love the girl who fixes your messes and expects nothing in return. But that girl died the second you drained my account. If you do this, my mother whispered, her eyes hardening with a final ugly venom, you are no daughter of ours. You'll be alone. No family, no home, no one to turn to when things get hard. Is a degree worth losing your soul? The escalation was final. The bridge wasn't just burning. I was the one who had poured the gasoline. I felt a vibration in my pocket, a text from Grandma Sylvia. The wire transfer is complete. The trust is restored. Leave now. I'm not losing my soul, Mom, I said, walking toward the door without looking back. I'm finally finding it. And as for being alone, I'd rather be alone than be an asset you liquidate. As I reached the elevator, I heard a loud, metallic crash from inside the penthouse, the sound of the heavy vault being forced open. My mother's scream followed, but it wasn't a scream of grief. It was a scream of pure, unadulterated terror. I hit the lobby button, my heart racing. Just as the doors were closing, a hand jammed between them, forcing them back open. It was Leo, his eyes wide and wild. Leah, wait. You can't leave me here with them. They took the car keys. I don't have anywhere to go. I looked at my brother, the boy who had been given everything at my expense. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. Figure it out, Leo, I said. And as the doors slid shut, I saw the reflection of a stranger in the elevator mirrors. Someone powerful, someone ruthless, and someone who was finally, truly free. The morning sun hit the campus spires, turning the stone to gold as I pulled my modest car into the freshman dormitory lot. The air here was different, clean, sharp, and smelling of old books and new beginnings. For the first time in 18 years, the crushing weight of being the strong one had been replaced by the lightness of being a student. My tuition was paid in full, my housing was secured, and the paper trail my parents had tried to bury was now a matter of public record. As I lifted the last box from my trunk, the one containing my own textbooks and the few items I'd salvaged from my room, my phone chimed in my pocket. I hesitated, then pulled it out. It was a notification from Grandma Sylvia's attorney. The luxury condo had been sold at a court-ordered auction that morning. The proceeds had already cleared, replenishing the trust to its original $200,000, plus interest and legal fees. My parents were officially homeless, living in a cramped rental on the edge of town while Silas awaited his first hearing. They had tried to trade my future for a penthouse view, and now they were left with nothing but the consequences. A second later, a flurry of texts flooded my screen. A desperate plea from my mother. Leah, we have nowhere to go. Please, for the sake of the family, talk to the bank. Then, a bitter message from Leo. You actually did it. You destroyed everything. I hope you're happy in your little dorm room while I'm sleeping on a couch. I looked at the messages, and for the first time, I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no anger, just a profound sense of closure. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my contacts, selected their names, and hit delete. One by one, the people who had viewed me as a resource rather than a daughter vanished from my life. I tucked the phone away and picked up my box. The campus bell began to toll, a deep, resonant sound that signaled the start of my first lecture. I walked toward the lecture hall, my head held high, and stepped through the heavy oak doors. I wasn't an asset, an intern, or a safety net anymore. I was Leah, and my story was finally mine to write. If you think Leah made the right choice by cutting off her toxic family, let me know in the comments. Make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss our next story of ultimate betrayal and justice. Thanks for watching.